Here be dragons.
You'd think with the amount of time we've spent around cameras, I would know that the red button means both start and stop recording, not delete the recording. The number of times I've hit it trying to delete the bad takes that we've done. I mean, of course, this is the first pass through.
Yes. In your defense, you mostly don't do the technical stuff.
There's a very good reason I'm not allowed to touch the camera.
Right.
Yes. So hello, hi. This is Here Be Dragons, which grammatically should probably be There Are Dragons, or There Are Dragons Over There.
Or here.
Or here. Yeah. Here there are. Here being the form of it present, and there being the over yonder.
But since that normally appeared on nautical maps, you have to picture that it's a pirate making the map. Here be dragons. Arr. They don't write R on the map, but they probably say it afterward.
They may also have copy editors that would remove that.
I doubt pirates had copy editors. But you never know.
You never know. It's so much has been lost to time.
Right.
So we're trying this new thing, this podcast thing, to round out the Patreon offerings and also practice our advanced writing avoidance techniques. I've been able to calculate that this could delay the writing I have to do by as many as 2 or 3 hours a month, which is...
That's pretty good.
That is pretty much.
Yeah.
I've discovered, I think it's a truism, that writers don't actually like writing. We like having written. There are times when, it can get into it, whatnot, but the most daunting words, of course, are the first. And there's so many things to do instead of writing that are critical right now.
Right.
I need to go over the spreadsheets again, or check email, or refresh the...
Get some inspiration from the latest YouTube video about subject X.
Yeah, which I then have to research thoroughly to become an expert on it, because I might need to write about that in the writing that I am currently avoiding.
Which requires either more reading or more YouTube videos.
More YouTube videos. It's an endless cycle once the dominoes start falling. So I think it's safe to say that we are experts now at podcasting. I have the microphone and I've laid the towel down underneath it.
Yeah, we've both spoken
towards the microphone.
And it's been picked up
there
by the
are
microphone.
Little lines on GarageBand right now that we're able to follow and that keep happening.
Yeah, that pause for dramatic effect was necessary.
I can actually edit that pause out.
Ooh.
I can make it not a pause at all later on when I'm stuck at a paragraph and decide to tinker with something that has no bearing on my financial success.
That sounds like a positive step.
Bit here, yes. So the title, now that we're the riffing, bit schmaltzing, which will continue, I'm sure, is out of the way. Went with the title Here Be Dragons because that was the part of the map, as you brought up earlier, drawn by pirates with copy editors.
Yes.
Was the part of the map that was always of the most interest to me, is what else is out there. I used to, when I was getting into fantasy literature as a youngin', sometimes I would buy the books based on the map itself because I wanted to see, well, what is this interesting cluster of islands over here? What's on the other side of that range? Or what are the peoples who live here? What are the stories and such? And that continues to be a source of interest.
Would you say that's one of the things that drew you to fantasy overall?
I'd say part of it was that, but also what I would do in my free time as a kid. Like growing up, we didn't always live in Washington State. I would consider myself a local now because I've lived the majority of my life here. Yeah. At least 2/3 of my life here. But growing up until I was about 10 or 11, my family lived elsewhere in the States. I was born in a small town in California called Los Angeles. But we moved
I think I've heard of it.
before the age of memory. My first memories are of snow on the ground, like 6 months out of the year, tunneling snow forts. I still, as a default ability, have hurl snowball with a +3 accuracy, and can dodge them pretty well. Because again, that was one of the first things I needed to learn.
That was in the Wisconsin,
That
right?
was in Wisconsin, yes.
We call it the Wisconsin
The
over
Cons.
here.
That's not what they call it here.
Oh,
But yeah,
I was
I
misinformed.
remember Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Eau Claire, which of course is French for clear water. The water in the Eau Claire River is brown.
Oh, I thought it was a dessert.
That's an eclair.
No, that's an electronic dessert.
I'm revisiting the co-host idea already. But then from there moved. So that was my understanding of the world. Was half of the time of the year it would be frozen, and if it didn't snow, your pipes would burst because they needed that layer of insulation covering the ground to keep the pipes underground from hitting the point where they would freeze and the ice would bust them.
I did not know that.
So
I'd
it's
never
actually-
thought of snow as a. I mean, I guess it makes sense. You know, you have ice homes such as igloos are kind of the most common. But yeah, you do that to stay warm
Yep.
inside.
So it was actually dangerous
That
if it
makes sense.
didn't snow
Huh.
out there because it could get, like, I remember what you accept as a child, you just kind of assume is true everywhere,
Yeah.
right? Like I remember seeing an interview with the NASCAR driver, Richard Petty Jr. Doesn't matter why I was watching it, where he said he remembers as a kindergartner, he was shocked to learn that not everyone's daddy drove race cars for a living, right? So I would walk to school because it was just across this. It was like there was our house, there was another house, then across the street, and there was the elementary school. So it's it's negative 25 degrees with wind chill. Mom puts you in a coat that was clearly made out of a polar sleeping bag and smears your face full of Carmex that you immediately wipe off when you're outside.
Right.
And then you go and go to your classroom and peel off all of your outer carapace of clothes, and then you learn about letters and shapes and things. And from there, we were there until I think it was first grade, first memories shaped by that. And then we had a bit of a change in going to San Antonio, Texas,
That's a little different.
for 3 years.
It's a little different.
And I have to say, I was actually really upset when we moved down there. Not culturally or anything because of that, but my understanding of Texas was shaped by westerns and the Coyote and Roadrunner cartoons.
Yeah.
So what I was expecting was dirt roads and saloons and the shutter door
Yeah.
things you go in and out of, and did I already mention spittoons?
No,
Spittoons
There we go.
everywhere, and cowboy hats and saguaro cacti, I should say. And when we got to Texas and the roads were paved and there were street lights, I was like, well, this is bullshit. I've been lied to. But that was interesting. Anyway, the long story, what that's going to is we did not live in Washington until I was right on the edge of coming out of boyhood.
Yeah.
And so the Pacific Northwest was a place where the rest of the family lived, and we would come back and vacation every summer. And my grandparents, my dad's folks, lived in Longview in River Country,
Oh yeah.
down there, in the southern Washington. And my mom's folks lived on a farm in Olympia, and they had this wonderful old forest that was protected wetlands, and I could go and just literally get lost in there for hours at a time as kind of a lonely kid and bookish who liked to read stories, and that's where the imagination kind of sparked. That's what steered my interest in fantasy there, and also helped that when I would come back to the farmhouse and I would find my grandparents' copy of Lord of the Rings, the leather-bound red one with the fold-out maps.
Mm-hmm. Do you think
The red
that's where the map thing, like that initial map from Lord of the Rings, because those books are, depending on the version you get, replete with maps. A lot of them. I remember my version had a fold-out map. My friend had a version that had almost no maps in it at all, which was kind of a travesty.
I remember that, and I remember my dad reading me The Hobbit when I was 4.
Mhm.
That was very formative. But yeah, the forest, my grandparents' forest, which isn't there anymore, actually. That was I don't even remember when it went away. Just that it was there for a while and then it was gone. And what happened was the city kept expanding, and my grandparents couldn't afford the taxes to keep it as wetland, so they had to sell the area off as lots. And so I remember coming down to visit at the time we were living in the state, I think I was a teenager, and I look out, past the pasture towards where this curtain of old twisted trees used to be, and it's just gone. And there's just a handful of them there, kind of twisted and out of shape, and because they'd been shaped by the competition for light that there was, which is a big difference in coming from Texas. In Texas, of course, the competition was for water.
Yeah.
So you had trees that wouldn't necessarily grow tall, but they would grow wide. Because they're
to shelter the ground near them.
Exactly, and try to and spread their roots out to grab as much of the moisture that was there, and that was fantastic for climbing, like the live oaks down in the south. Marvelous. You could skitter all the way up to the top, poke your head out of the canopy. Then you come to the northwest, where there's all these tight, uptight trees that just go shoot straight up, and it's hard to climb them because the branches are so compact.
Yeah.
I remember also I did the Cub Scouts in Texas, and of course it's one of the things they teach you out there is how to survive. So we'll always make sure you can find water and shade, and then we move to the Pacific Northwest. And so the other bit was, there was the forest, and then that was gone all of a sudden. But the other thing that has remained was the Oregon coast, is where the family would vacation. Which, if you haven't been, Oregon has this interesting combination of, it's got the best of sort of like the California coast as people would picture them, and the very rocky, very cold Alaskan, British Columbian coasts.
Yeah.
There is that you've got these long, flat beaches where the gradient, the slope into the ocean is so gradual that at the right time of day, part of the beach is just a mirror sheen, and the clamming goes on forever, and you can walk, 50 yards and be ankle deep, whereas in California you take 2 steps and you're up to your knees in the water. And then there are just these titanic rocks every now and then, so it's where this stark contrast between flat, beautiful, gradual plain, and then boom, massive rocks there. Magical location. And the best part was, unlike the Washington coast, the Oregon coast is publicly owned. It's considered a highway, is what I remember. So while there are public beaches and parks and whatnot, you can't own the beach. Like in Washington, it really sucks. Like the nearest beach to us, where we live, is Dash Point, and we'll get to this little park, and the beaches are kelpy, and there's seaweed that always washes up, and it kind of stinks because of that. But you go, 50 yards to the left of the park, and there's a big sign that says private property. Yeah. And you can't explore. It discourages exploration there. But the Oregon coast, you can go wherever you like, as long as it's safe. And if you're renting a beach house that's, a mile from downtown, but you have beach access, it doesn't matter. You just walk to the beach. You've got your own, feels like, private section of this wonderful.
Yeah, especially if you're in one of the less populated areas. I was actually just down there, what's today, Monday? 2 days ago.
2 days ago.
And yeah, I mean, we were at a busier spot, but you walk down far enough, and there was nothing there. It was just you and beach.
Where were you staying?
Lincoln City.
Lincoln City. That's about, we've been to Lincoln City a couple times. It's about as far south as we range.
Yeah, we sometimes, every couple of years we go down to Oregon and stay there on the coast. Sometimes we go down to Newport and stay there. But we tend to do Lincoln City. And we, interestingly, one of the things that I remember vividly about the Oregon coast as a kid was down in Florence. There are these, there's this big cave, this giant sea cave that's full of sea lions. They're called the Sea Lion Caves.
The Sea Lion Caves. I've been there.
And
the smell is ghastly.
It's atrocious. It's a terrible smell, but it's a cool cave, and there are usually tons of sea lions there.
You got to take the elevator down from the.
Yeah, it's a pretty long elevator. So I was there with my fiance and my family, and Hannah had never seen the Sea Lion Caves before. So I was like, well, we need to go do that. I need to go show you the Sea Lion Caves. Yes, there's a terrible smell, but it's kind of cool. So it's an hour and a half at least from Lincoln City, depending on traffic. And we stop a few times. We get, lunch and stuff. So it's about 2 hours or so on the way down. And we get there, and I say, okay, go up to the lady at the desk and so, hey, let's see these Sea Lion Caves. And she says, great, you're going to love it. It is the largest sea cave in the United States. It is the second largest sea cave in the world. It's fantastic. By the way, there are no sea lions there. I said, wait, is the sea lion caves. There are no sea lions. They're all out eating this time of year and they don't come by. And I remember, because we'd been there before, but I didn't know exactly where it was. My sister had gone, to try and figure out what we could do while we were there and grabbed a bunch of brochures from a hotel. And I looked at it. I double-checked it after we got out. Nowhere on there did it say, hey, by the way, there's a time of year where the sea lion caves are lacking sea lions. There specifically says the sea lion caves, not big-ass sea cave plus sometimes sea lions. It is the sea lion caves, and there were none there.
False advertising.
Yeah. I was very disappointed. We went and saw a nearby lighthouse instead, which was nice. It was interesting, but it wasn't, a smelly cave full of sea lions, which is, goddammit, what I went to see.
Mm-hmm. I remember the time I went there with my brother, we did actually see them. This is when we would do some road trips in college where we would sleep in his car, put the back seats down in this like crappy old Toyota Tercel that couldn't go faster than 50 miles an hour on the hills, and we'd sleep in sleeping bags, and because our hips didn't ache us the way they do in your 20s when you're still kind of Gumby. And
your back could recover from anything.
You can live on ramen and
the good old days.
Yeah, right. Well, we got there and we took the elevator down, and it opened up, and it smelled like a place bats would abandon. But when we looked down there, and most of the sea lions were not. They'd filled up all the spots. It was interesting. You look down there, and it looks like something from the set of a Pirates of the Caribbean movie. Mm-hmm. There's a kind of little island in the middle. At least it seemed like 2 to 3 stories of empty space that had been carved out by the water. But all the open space on the edges, sort of the little shelves of rock, were just covered in sea lions that were mostly not doing anything.
Right.
The ones who were doing anything were doing the sea lion call, which sounds somewhere between a growl and a burp. So we stand down there, it smells awful, and it's loud, right? Yeah. There's like dozens of decibels of farting, belching sea torpedoes that are muscle and blubber, filling the air with the scent of fish burps and like this is majestic. What beautiful creatures are they? Oh God, let's get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, you have to figure it's a cave full of seawater, and seawater at times can smell pretty terrible.
Especially
but it's
if it gets trapped in a cave, full of droppings.
Right, exactly. And you have sea lions whose main food is fish, so you have fish that's been turned into poop scattered everywhere in this cave. So yeah, it's not going to smell great.
It doesn't smell great down there, but it was nice to see that many sea lions in one place.
Yeah, I mean, it's neat to see.
It is cool. All right. Have no gentle segue out of
out of sea lion
poop.
Out
of sea lion poop, but what I have written down in the notes was maps transition to what you're reading.
All right.
What were we talking about? Maps. Right. What else is out there? Right. Okay. So currently, what I'm reading is a book by a fellow named Colin Woodard, or Woodward, I forget. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to look it up because all the clicking we would hear on the keyboard, and they would contaminate the audio. But I read his previous book, which was called American Nations, which was fascinating. Because one thing that I'd always, that's sort of an interest of mine was looking at the United States as not as it is currently, but how it might be in the future, and understanding that the history of most empires is that they break apart.
Right.
And the question to me was always, when and if that happens, what is the result going to look like? What would a balkanized U.S. look like? And so I discovered this book, and which actually made it sound more like it is an inevitability than a possibility. Specifically because, well, I'll tell you about it. It's called The 11 Nations of American Nations, and about how there are 11 different nations in North America. And we don't mean the ones that we see on the map, U.S., Canada, and Mexico. And in the introduction, he writes about how in the West, in this country in particular, we use the terms nation and country as synonyms, and they're really not. A nation specifically is a group of people, whereas a state is a sovereign political entity.
Geographic location.
Exactly. Well, in this case, the state is like the United Kingdom is a state.
Yeah.
But the Welsh are a nation.
Yeah.
Right. And in a lot of the world, you do have nation states, and you have a lot of stateless nations, like the Kurds and the Palestinians do not have a country of their own. They are stateless nations. And using that as the criteria, I went and did some digging and research into the U.S.'s settlement patterns, voting records, waves of migration, and was able to determine basically, no, there are 11 different nations, different identifiable nations with different values, who came at different times from different regions, settled in different areas, and the clashes between these nations are what's behind all of our political division nowadays. Beginning with, and going all the way back to before the Revolutionary War, saying that the Revolutionary War was not a united front. It was about 4 nations who joined the war for different reasons, finished it at different times, and that one of the reasons why the Constitution was ratified 12 years after, or 12 to 13 years after the war, was because it took that long to get any sort of federalism going, to get these nations to agree on anything.
Yeah.
And it's not a state-by-state thing. It's a regions within the state sort of thing. Anyway, I found it fascinating, particularly because one of the in the earliest iteration of Strowler's, we were looking at doing an alternate history of the United States, and one of those was there isn't a United States. There's a bunch of different kingdoms that happened instead of democracy.
Right.
Divine rule of kings survived into that day. And Ben and I have talked about it. Says we really still like that concept, and we'd like to do something with it someday. Anyway, the book is fascinating. I'm reading a new one now called American Character, which is sort of a further exploration of the idea that he outlined in American Nations, but of the struggle between theories of individualism and theories of communalism, because that's been the big struggle between these nations, specifically the 2 superpowers of Yankeedom and the Deep South, of hyper-individualism, which means no state at all. Liberty is my ability to do whatever I can for myself, versus no, the state is good and we need to work together to advance ourselves as a people, and the role of the state is to make a perfect society on Earth. Yeah. And the point that he makes that's fascinating, I'm only about halfway through the book right now, is individualists will defeat communitarians, but groups of communitarians will defeat groups of individualists.
I guess that makes sense.
And it makes sense. And it's like, specifically, as he points to the American Civil War for how it began, how the battles were won originally, and how the tide originally turned. Yeah. It was that the slave lord owners in the Deep South refused to collectivize enough and severely damaged the Confederacy's ability to defend itself by refusing to pay taxes or contribute to the war cause there, because they saw that as an infringement on their liberty that they were fighting for. Fascinating, right?
That is.
Anyway, that's what I'm reading right now. How about yourself?
Right, I'm coughing. I'm not reading anything quite so heady right now. For a while, in between other books, I've been making my way through the Dark Tower series.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'd never read it. And then they were coming out with the movie, and I was like, oh, well, I guess I better read the series now. And then I read the first 2 books, and then I read other books, and then I came back to the 3rd book, and then I read other books, and then I'm finally coming back to the 4th book. So obviously it's been a while. I was told that, once the movie came out, they were like, oh, yeah, it's not really like the books. So I felt less pressure to finish those before I watched the movie. But I'm still looking to do that. But the other book I've been putting off reading is I think it's Fool's Assassin. Is that the 3rd one in the Fitz and the Fool series by Robin Hobb?
So it's Royal Assassin?
It's in the new, like, the Fitz and the Fool.
Oh,
so
it's a new trilogy.
It's the 3rd installment in that trilogy, and I've sort of been putting it off, not because I don't love it, but because I kind of don't want to finish it. I kind of want to feel like I'm still in the middle of that story.
I've had The Stone Sky, the 3rd book in the N.K. Jemisin's Hugo sweeping trilogy, for a year, and I haven't cracked it open because I don't want the series to end yet. I know exactly what you're saying.
It's just such a good series. I think you would really like this series if you haven't done the Fitz and the Fool series yet.
You turned me on to Robin Hobb and the Fool series, and I remember because right after I got out of grad school, I went on this binge of reading because I wanted to not watch any more movies for their structure, and I wanted to not read any more books about theory and structure, and so I just give me escapism, give me fantasy. And I read that first trilogy, and at the end of that trilogy, I was aghast.
I remember.
Aghast at the state of the protagonist.
Yeah.
I've never seen an author, read an author do that to the protagonist at the end and feel such intense emotion that was negative.
Yeah.
In such a way.
But it was so good.
So good, yes. Oh no, not disparaging the quality at all. Yeah. It's just completely unexpected.
I remember you telling me once you finished, you went online to figure out, did she write more about this? Because I can't leave it here.
I can't leave it here. My God.
And you were relieved to find out she had done it.
I was, and then and I read the second trilogy, and I guess maybe the reason I haven't explored more is I'm happy with him being safe now at the end of the second one, or safe-ish. I don't want to...
Yeah.
I know what you're capable of doing to this character.
Yeah, no. She did... it's so good. It's so good. To anyone listening, if you haven't read Robin Hobb's stuff, it's fantastic. Did you read her other trilogies? Because almost all of her trilogies are... with the exception of the Soldier Son trilogy, which is, I think you'd find very interesting if you haven't read it. But it's, Fitz and the Fool in some form or another. The first one's the Farseer trilogy, then it's the Live Ships, then it's back to the Tawny Man, which is Fitz and the Fool, then it's, what's the next one?
Is it the Forest Mage? The Shaman,
yes. No, Forest Mage is Soldier Son, I think.
Soldier Son, okay.
It's the Rain Wilds.
Rain Wilds, ooh. I did read the Live Ship Traders trilogy, and I loved that.
Oh, it was so good.
The setting there, so yeah, I'd be happy to revisit. It's just a matter of finding the time. Yeah. Right now.
Yeah, I think you'd like that one because it also sets up then Fitz and the Fool, which is the third trilogy with Fitz and the Fool.
Yeah. I was doing a lot of this reading before the children showed up.
Has that impacted your time, Matt?
Somewhat. My God, I used to think I didn't have any time. Whereas now, if I get 35 minutes at the end of the day to shower, I'm like, score! Man.
Achievement unlocked.
I am living it up. I'm wearing clean underwear today, baby. Yeah. It's interesting how age and children really forces you to select your hobbies or winnows them down into what's most important. Well, there's a down note and a good place for a transition into something else.
Yes.
Right there. So we ended on humor the first time, and there we ended on a bit of depression and poignancy, melancholy.
So now we'll have to choose option 3 for the next one, or do we just go back and forth between humor and melancholic seriousness?
I don't know. Let's see. What have I got left on the agenda here? What we're up to, then riff, question mark, and then the questions that I'm supposed to answer.
All right.
Here. So, what we've been up to. I am a little sluggish this morning.
I wonder why.
It's talk about a perfect storm of heavy events. I noticed a few years back that deadlines seem to travel in packs.
I've noticed something similar.
Right?
Yeah, you usually have everything due at the same time.
At the same time.
A nice even interval.
So today is Monday. The last 3 days, what's happened is on Saturday, Kickstarter for the new novel Wrapped, which, very grateful for that. Thank you for everyone who backed The Fatal Frontier. Very excited to be telling this story.
You've been talking about this story for a while, in different iterations.
This is one that came out of a DG improv a performance at Tacoma Little Theater in like 2004, I think. And the nugget for the idea was there. And it was the first, I wrote it as a project called Red Shirts. It was the first screenplay I wrote at AFI. Couldn't continue with that name, of course, because Scalzi wrote the novel called Red Shirts. Right. But which I've read. It's fantastic. I think it's gotten picked up for a television development option.
Oh, cool.
Right now. But I've read it, and it's different enough. It's a completely different take on the on parodying the Star Trek universe.
Okay.
So safe there. But nice to be seeing that now and having a chance to really sort of let it marinate for a while and discover more about what the story is really about from a societal and a satirical standpoint. So that's nifty. But it just happened, and like I said, it wrapped on Saturday. It only crossed its funding level on Friday.
Oh, okay.
And then did manage to hit a stretch goal, which is great because
great.
I can Phil and Brian will be doing the audiobook version of that, which is great
cool.
because I don't have to, and I am so supremely uncomfortable sitting here talking to you into this little microphone that's judging us with its blue light.
Well, it probably doesn't help that I'm not wearing pants.
That I'm used to that.
Oh, well,
I know.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's done. It's going to keep the lights on for a while,
right
which
on.
is grand. Just about ready to ship that, which is Nathan's holding right now the proof for you can't. He's showing it to the microphone.
See?
Nathan.
No, does this not?
Nathan.
Well, maybe they can.
No.
What if they're like Daredevil and they can read stuff with their through sound waves, and so maybe that works through the microphone.
Are you done?
We can. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, okay.
It's the proof for Hop Jockey, which is a project I've been working on in one form or another since the days of DG development.
Yeah.
And I'm holding it right now. It's still weird that it's done, but that'll be going into duplication soon and shipping that all out. So that proof arrived the same week that the Fatal Frontier was about to wrap. That wraps, hits its goal. Okay, now I can relax. No, I can't, because the next day was yesterday was my wife Camille's 40th birthday party, which was a surprise party that I've been organizing with two of her bridesmaid girlfriends for the last 2.5 months. And
well, she knew there was a party. She just didn't know anything about it.
Exactly.
Like, she just knew to be ready on that date.
And here's the difficult thing. You know, have any idea how hard it is to keep a secret from Camille? Because she is naturally inquisitive, but she's also a professional event planner. So information I have to give her about this is the time of day we're going, she's going to be able to interpolate into a much better selection of possible venues than the average layperson.
Right.
Right. It was to the point where I could say, "Can I ask you? No. Can I help with it? No. What do you want me to? Nothing. Stop." It was great. I was able to get Bree to yell at her too, because I can't yell stop at her anymore without it becoming a thing. But if her girlfriends do it, then it's all right. Anyway, it was a grand party. Went from 7 to 11 p.m. last night. There was so much alcohol, so much dancing. I made vanilla bourbon ice cream.
It was good.
To go with this cake from her favorite baker that we got made and shipped out, and it worked. It was grand. It was another cathartic moment and end of another thing that had taken months to plan and run. So today gets to be the day off, except no, it doesn't. You see, because the Tacoma School District teachers had been on strike.
Right.
To get the pay increase that they were owed.
Was way overdue.
That was way overdue. We've had a lot of problems in Washington State's public education in making sure that the teachers get the raises that they are due. In fact, I think it's the Department of Education has been in contempt of court and was racking up major fines.
Yeah.
Of something like hundreds of thousands of dollars a day because they were in violation of something that I should probably look up and read to, but it's not as critical to the story. Which is, some of the school districts went back. Their teachers got their raises, and they went back to school when school was supposed to start. Our district did not, and so the teachers went on strike, which I approved of, and am glad that they got their what they were due. And but we didn't start school as the time we were expecting to. We thought we had more time, and then we heard Friday, the day that we were doing final prep for these other two major events. Hey, they've worked out their issues, and school starts on Monday, after the party that goes until well after midnight.
Right.
And so I am dead this morning, basically, but the kids are in school, and that's good. And that next chapter to my patrons is going to be a little bit late. Because I need a
heads up.
Going to bag a little extra time to finish that with everything else that's been going on. But anyway, that pack of deadlines seems to have passed. Oh, and there's prep for the next Kickstarter, Journey Quest 3.5, that's kicking off on Friday, and that we're going to be running live events for.
Oh, that's right.
So I get basically 3 days to lie motionless in the stream of life until I hit the next patch of rapids and bounce down the rocks.
Because it's a river.
That was the metaphor.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
That I was.
So it's wet too, probably cold. That's
So I guess we're going with awkwardness in this transition.
Is that? Yeah, I think. Is this awkward?
I'm just going to cross off riff here.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
That's yeah.
And now, as we always do on this program, we've reached the questions of these are submitted, and I said I'd answer some questions. So here they are.
All right. I will read you the questions. Would you like me to start here? Because these look like they're attributed to people.
At the start, yes.
All right. Oh, this one is too. It's just formatted differently. From Moritz.
Okay.
What did you do for researching Pwned? After reading the novel, I was surprised to find out that you never played an MMO over a longer period of time.
Right. So, Pwned, when I first was doing the research for that, it was when I was doing the screenplay version of this. So this was about 10 years ago.
I remember that.
And I was living in California at the time, and it was some of the co-producers of Darkness Rising.
Oh yeah,
who had said you should
Coddiwomple.
who really liked the idea of doing a gamer's movie set in an MMO.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really have any experience with MMOs at that point, but Cindy Rice, the producer with Epic Level, said, well, we play World of Warcraft. I have an account. I can give you my login information that you can use for research.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that specifically without reading the rule book or going online or doing any of that sort of research, because the character who is using MMO to try to find his lost lover has no...
Did exactly that.
Did exactly that.
Yeah.
Has no experience in the games, did not think highly of the games, and so went in completely unprepared. So I went in completely unprepared. And it was fun, but I clearly had no idea what I was doing. Like, I did not know that there was an auction house. So I was using the same shitty gear that I got from quests way past their usefulness. If something dropped for me, I didn't know I would just sell it if I couldn't use it.
Oh.
I would buy my weapons from vendors. They were the white quality weapons too, so the basic stuff there. And I didn't know that dungeons or elite enemies were a thing. So I remember following the quest chain for Dead Mines, and going to the entrance, and there's a guard there that's kicking my ass. I was like, how have I only whittled him down a third of my hit points, and I've got to run, and he's chasing me down, and because I didn't know that elite was a thing there.
Maybe you should have a buddy helping back.
Exactly.
You up,
So, and I managed to annoy and astonish some other players there with my complete lack of knowledge, and that did kind of go into the game. But since then, I got pretty hooked and played for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Camille and I still have accounts, and we play. Not as much anymore, again, with the kids thing. But I never became a raider. I was always more interested in the content than I was in the end game. I wanted to, play each race that you could, or each faction at least, get to every zone and play every quest. And
I have a very similar approach when I... I think... did you ever play the Star Wars The Old Republic?
I did not.
That one was actually really interesting because it had basically 4 different character classes, but there was the light side and the dark side. So it ended up being 8 character arc stories you could play through.
Oh, that's cool.
So that was, and some of them were better than others. Some of them were really good. That one I enjoyed specifically because I got 8 stories out of it.
Dark side Ewok Jedi?
They didn't have Ewoks, but there were dark side Jedi, and you could do different races. I think someone told me that after, I think it was Star Wars Galaxies, and this was back when Lucasfilm was still owned by George Lucas, there was something about it that was humorous or like ridiculous, and George Lucas, this is just what I was told, I have never looked this up to verify, but said, no more playable Wookiees in video games. This is ridiculous. I hate this. So, just something I read, or no, was told, and have not ever verified, so this could be just a random thing that someone made up and told me. Just
I would believe it
out there.
All right.
Next question. Looks like it's also from Moritz. Also, how did you prepare for playing Mitch? What mental exercises were necessary to get into the head of such a complex character?
None. How I prepared for Mitch. I prepared for Mitch the same way I prepared for Hunk and for Chibi-chan, which is someone else was supposed to play the part, and we needed to save money or time. So
Or both.
Or both, and I fit the costume, so okay, I'll do it. But for Mitch specifically, the character came out of actually a discussion with one of the producers, Tish Lopez, when we decided where we were going to shoot Lodge's house. And when we finally saw the house and we looked around it, logically, like, wait a minute, so Lodge is a mid-level starting technical writer. He can't afford a house in this area here. He needs a roommate. And it was like, well, if we have a roommate, we have an entire other character he has to deal with. They're going to be,
Right.
Unless he's just like passed out on the floor all the time. And so we made a roommate who was passed out on the floor. No one cares what Mitch's arc is. No one cares how they get along, how they split the rent, whether he
how
approves
Mitch makes
of the game.
money.
No one cares, right?
That's the best part.
That's the best part. So out of this logic problem came this character, and then it was like, well, we're not going to pay someone to lie on the floor all day. And so I put on the bathrobe. And at one point, when my face was in the pizza box, I fell asleep. Because we were doing very long shoots that day, and I fell asleep with my face in a used pizza box.
Yeah, I remember, because you would often get up from a take and you'd have like grease over half your face because we used an actual used pizza box.
That time I had an excuse for the grease on my face.
Yeah. All right, let's see what we got next. From Andy. Humans and Households was a nearly 12-year-old script when it filmed. The world and you undoubtedly changed a great deal between the initial draft and what went on screen. What process did you go through to get it screen ready? What did you learn about your past self, if anything? Did you find any points of shame that made you cringe?
That's like 3 questions.
Yeah, that's like 3 questions. The first one was, process did you go through to get it screen ready?
First was actually making it into a series, because the original script was, I think it was only like 12 pages long, and it was a single entity, single unit. And of course, by the time we filmed it, we were starting to experiment with web series, and the idea behind that one, Natural One, was, together there's enough content for a disc, but we can also if we can make them each into a little 3-part episode, it's sort of like a test. It's like, does the audience like this? If they do, maybe we can do a full series of it later on, a 6, 8, 10 episode order. So the first bit was taking the original bit and breaking it and making it into something more. And in the original script, as with the original gamers, the player versions weren't really well fleshed out.
Right.
And there was also almost no satire or social commentary in the original script. It was all just the dumb stuff like crossing the street, drinking the NyQuil, but all the stuff about like I cast Ray of Guilt, knowledge check conservative media, the stuff about the cop and white privilege. None of that was there because I wrote it when I was in my 20s and was in a much less aware bubble of how the world really works.
Right.
And as for stuff that makes me cringe, oh God. Originally, the healer character was not a nurse named Candy Striper. Originally, she was a lifeguard named Chesty Brazier.
I remember that.
Yeah, I had forgotten. I looked at the script again and was like, yeah, so that's a little cringeworthy. It's like, I understand at the time I was making like a Baywatch joke there, just the ridiculousness of having a woman in a red swimsuit away from the beach.
Right.
With the
and running
stuff.
Everywhere in slow motion.
Yeah. Which was a little unnecessary, a little exploitative, and also we were filming in Canada. So it turned out much better.
Yeah,
there. But
I think so.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. From Moritz again. Humans and Households 2. Since Season 2 will probably feature all new characters, other than the GM, I would be curious to know if you planted any plot hooks in the first season that now won't pay off. E.g., it looked to me like the mage, Joanna's character was a mage, right? And the GM shared a meaningful, maybe romantic, glance at the end of season 1.
So the question is...
Is there anything you planted in season 1
that might not work
that
now.
might not work now?
Right. Not really. I mean, the goal behind H&H was like with the original gamers is let's tell a complete little story.
Mm-hmm.
And if it grows into something, that's great. There was that little look at the end, and maybe that turns into something, but I wasn't thinking long term with those characters by any means. Though the GM would most likely be back.
Yeah.
There. I will say that the most blowback I've ever gotten on anything I've written was for killing pickles in humans now. I was surprised by. I mean, it happens off screen.
Right.
It doesn't. There's not even a scream.
Right.
It's just. I still think it's funny.
I think it's great.
But some people are mortified by that, and I don't know if we've lost people over that or whatnot. But what is it? There was some poll done that most Americans would, given the choice between saving the life of a stranger or their dog, they would save their dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think both Americans and to actually a greater extent the English have a very strong bond with animals, especially because there are a lot of times where you're not allowed to express certain emotions to
As
other
an American
people.
male, I
Right.
don't know what you're speaking
Yeah, to other people, but you can express them with your dog. You can be like, good boy, who's a good boy, who's so cute, whatever. You can have that relationship with your dog where you get to say things to your dog you can't say to another person because of some sort of social restriction.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand.
And we killed one and cheered while it
Right,
happened.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And
All
so
right, I get that now.
we committed the cardinal sin.
Okay, yes.
Let's see, next question. The Fatal Frontier is the first novel you write that takes place entirely in a fictional setting. Your other 2 novels are standing with one foot in the real and with the other in a fictional world, so to speak. Do you have a preference for either of these 2 categories? Purely fictional versus half-half. What do you dislike about those categories?
I don't know that I have a preference between fictional or half fictional, half real. I think that it's certainly to your benefit to have a story that's grounded in the real world or that's relatable. A story has to be relatable no matter where it's set. And in that, I guess I would say I prefer I prefer speculative fiction because I'm not as interested in stuff that's set just in the here and now. If it's historical, certainly. If it's drama just doesn't do it for me as a genre. It's not a thing that interests me in and of itself.
Like straight drama?
Straight drama. Because also, I mean, drama, I don't consider it really a genre so much as I consider it the base. Like, everything has drama in it. I mean, unless it's even comedy has drama in it, unless it's farce.
Right.
All narrative has drama unless it's melodrama.
Right.
So to say drama is its own genre is to be saying it's like what kind of structures do you like? I like buildings. To me, it's like okay, but that's present in everything.
Right.
Right. I don't know. I prefer what else is out there. I prefer the Here Be Dragons. Yeah. Part of it is, I think that one of the downsides of living in the modern era is there are so few mysteries anymore. And the big ones are either solved or people have settled into opposing factions, camps on.
Yeah.
There's not room for daydreaming about this stuff anymore. There's not stuff out there to explore and discover unless you are a very specified specialist.
You mean like
in
an
it.
astrophysicist? Or...
Exactly, yeah. It's like the discoverability of, well, the world's knowledge has been mapped and discovered and commoditized.
Yeah.
I look to speculative fiction for escape and relation to, I don't know where I'm going with this.
Well, I mean,
it's an interesting question. I'm gonna have to mull on it a bit more. I can't describe it with words right now. Articulate. Okay. That's the verb.
There you go.
Can't
like
articulate it. Yes.
Yeah. A point of articulation. Is
yeah.
what I was going for.
Pointing there. Okay. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
It was a play on words.
I suppose.
Is that what that? It was neither of those things.
Read the last.
I'm going for awkward again.
That's very good. Yeah.
Okay.
Read the last question.
Well, the last question is basically kind of like the thing you were just discussing. Could you imagine writing a novel screenplay without any speculative elements? Is a project like that already in your drawer?
Yes, and yes. A couple, actually. I have done a couple of dramas, but again, drama in the sense of set in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
But one's a comedy, and one I guess you could say is a romance. Like one of the first screenplays I wrote was a project called Undergrad.
Yeah.
That at the time was very important to me. It was when I was still in college, and I think recently got out. I think it was about 2003, and I've had 3 projects so far that were projects that I knew I had to write and that I would write eventually, but I did not know how to do it. 3 projects that felt like, if I write this, I will level.
Okay.
In a way, and
like if you write it and get it right.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's a thing that I had to have done regardless.
Right.
And the first of these was Undergrads, which was, I had to write it at the time, but I don't consider it a good story anymore. It's not relevant anymore, and my sensibility in it, I think, was misplaced. But I'm glad that I did it still, to kind of get it out of the way.
Yeah.
The other 2 of those projects were actually Hop Jockey and Grandmother Clock, which is later on the docket. And I've written those 2 as screenplays. Hop Jockey now is a novel. The other project that is already in my drawer that has no speculative elements is Sneaky Pete's Harem, which will never see the light of day.
I knowing that story, I really like that one. I think that one has some legs to it, actually.
So the story behind that, and I'm not going to talk about the actual plot. One, I'd have to rename it, because there's actually a Sneaky Pete show now, I think, on Amazon.
Oh, with Giovanni
Ribisi. Yeah, it's one of those things. It reminds me of something they did teach us at grad school, which is no one is out to steal your ideas.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just convergence. Sometimes it's people have the same idea for something, and if you're the first to market, that happens. Like, I
know there have been a few ideas that we've discussed that have been like, oh, someone came up with that. They came up with it a lot later. They just happened to have the money to make it.
Well, I remember pitching. We had a pitch guru come to class one day, and we were supposed to give him our best pitches, and I had this idea of how, the night before the wedding, the groomsmen lose the groom. And he's like, that's in development right now. It's called The Hangover. I'm like, oh, okay. Right? And then there was one I never developed beyond just an original sort of sketch, which was in a fantasy world knocking a star out of the sky by accident, and then saw Starfall. Or Stardust.
Stardust. The one with Michelle Pfeiffer.
Michelle Pfeiffer and the Neil Gaiman story.
Yeah, it was Robert De Niro also, right?
Yep, that was great. I really enjoyed that one.
It was fun.
And then, title of Red Shirts, Sneaky Pete,
Yep.
Whatever. Anyway, Sneaky Pete's Harem was the third cycle film that I had to do. In your first year at AFI, when you're learning what you're there to do. And the thing that's about the American Film Institute Conservatory that's different from the other elite film schools is that you're not going there for a general film education.
Right.
You're going there specifically to be a screenwriter or an editor or a cinematographer, and you will work with other teams, working with SAG actors, with set budgets. You will do your duty in these 4-day shoots. You do 3 of them in your first year, the cycle films, and every week before those cyclofilms play, and you get out in front of the entire student body after your film plays, and you sit up there and you do not say anything, as the late Frank Pearson, the Academy Award-winning writer of Cool Hand Luke and Dog Day Afternoon, picks you apart. If he likes it, great. If he's doesn't, he's going to say exactly what was wrong with it, and he's right.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because he has a little golden statue. Right? And you'd have to do this throughout the semester. So every Friday, 4 cycle films go, which meant that every week 4 cycle films were filming. And you not only had to film your own cycles, you had to serve as crew on other people's so that you could learn the other roles around set.
What else was going on?
Anyway, for cycle 3, by the 3rd cycle, you maybe start to earn a bit of a reputation, or people go as, okay, so you're a comedy guy, or you're an action person, or you like writing this, you're really good at this suspense. Yeah. And so groups start to form, and I wound up with a comic producer and comic director, and we made a cycle film called Sneaky Pete's Harem. It's not important about what. Just that after it screened, when we were all wearing our matching Sneaky Pete's Harem t-shirts, Frank Pearson said, I don't really know what to say about that one, and immediately opened it up to questions. And then...
is that the only time he was ever
only
kind of stumped?
Yes. And so then we even had a sea chanty that we sang at the end of it.
I remember.
That covered the end credits. And so anyway, then in the second year, 5 of the 6 disciplines are required to produce a thesis film, which is basically a short film you are going to send out on the festival circuit to represent you and your team. The screenwriters have the option of writing one of those or writing on one of those if your scripts don't get approved, or doing a second feature screenplay for your portfolio. I went with that option. And came back, that was a pretty difficult summer for us, a summer of 2006, because Darkness Rising was going through its final editing. Well, that we thought of at that time. Still wouldn't come out until 2008.
Right.
But 2006 was the summer it premiered at Gen Con, and it was also the summer that my mother-in-law died. And, Camille had gone back up to Seattle to be with the family, and I was down there doing the summer classes as they existed and working with Dan in the audio, well, it's not the audio, the video booth, which was his apartment, right, with an un-air-conditioned apartment with a computer that ran hot. Oh, it was in LA. In LA, it was awful, and then it was time to go out to Gen Con. So, I actually drove up to Seattle first, and Karen had taken a turn for the worse. She was in hospice care in the house there, and the family insisted that I go out to Gen Con because you worked on this, you need to be there. She'd want you, so I go, and I'm there for one day, and then I get the call that you need to come back. Yeah, and so I did. I remember that. And she passed, and afterwards. Camille stayed up with her family for the next 8 weeks or so, and I drove back down by myself, and I loved her. She was, we were very close and very similar in personality and temperament. She was my strongest, aside from Camille, she was my strongest connection on that side of the family. Yeah. And so I came back down, and I was on my own, and it was late August now. The classes were beginning, and so I go into my second year classes there, and they're asking us about, okay, ready to present your plans for your second year screenplay that you've outlined. And here's the idea that I had that I may turn into a novel later on. I presented it to the screenwriting faculty there. It's called The Wizard of Wonderland, and it's basically, you take three of the great public domain works of children's literature.
Mm-hmm.
The Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland, and Peter Pan.
Mm-hmm.
And the twister hits all three of them, and the girls land in the wrong fantasy worlds. And they nod and says, "That's really funny. Where's it go?" And says, "I don't have any more than that." And I got chewed out. I got chewed out for not taking it seriously, for not doing the kind of character work that was necessary, for not having a planned out narrative at the beginning of the year. And so I went home from that smarting, and, so I sat down. I was like, "Okay, all right, assholes. You get the feature version of Sneaky Pete's Harem." And so I did, and turned it into something that I met the graduation requirement. But that again, I'm never gonna see the light of day. I don't think it was fun. I'm glad I wrote it, but not appropriate. I don't know. It would be very difficult to pull off and not be inappropriate
or insensitive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's done. It lives in my archive. But I have done drama, or I should say, I have done stuff set in the real world. It's definitely not a drama.
Yeah. No.
Not whatsoever. And look at that. Just like that, we're over 1 hour.
Oh yeah.
So we did kind of go from the humor to the
serious.
To serious and depressing to the humor and the depressing
Awkward.
again. And
We hit awkward a couple
I think
times.
we covered all the bases here, and now
That's a baseball reference.
let's hope I don't delete this while trying to turn it off.
All right.
Thanks for listening, and
Thanks for having me on.
you're welcome. Hope you'd come back sometime.
I intend to.
All right. Well, let's do this again in a month. What do you say?
In. I'm in for that.
Oh, okay. In a month. All right.
In a month.
Bye, everyone.